So I know St Nicholas, but that's almost it. And I don't know why he's St Nicholas. Is it no boxes under the cassocks? You've really got to question a religion that's so obsessed about merchandising. Or perhaps I could just see the value of a potential antique straight from the off, the same that we've sort of thought about that phone. I'm going to keep it, it's going to be an antique one day. Salacious story that it is, I think it's more likely that John was going to be able to raise a rebellion against Herod, and the one was spending it forward and the other was paying it forward. So I know St Nicholas, but that's almost it. And I don't know why he's St Nicholas. Is it no boxes under the cassocks? I've found plenty of references to obscure purposes for the saints, but not so many of their actual stories, like often brutal and bizarre creation myths. There's St Servetus, 4th century Armenian who died in Maastricht in the Netherlands of an infection of a leg wound. So as well as the city of Maastricht, centre of Europe. Any pilgrimage for leg disorder of any type, foot, rheumatism, protection against rats and mice, you should pray or make pilgrimage to St Servetus rather than call the local pest control. St Vedast is the patron saint of children who are late learning to walk. St Rita. Despite wanting to be a nun, St Rita's parents forced her to marry when she was about 12. Through her husband, she became embroiled in a bitter feud between two local families. The feud eventually led to her husband's murder and the deaths of both her sons. Because of her lifetime of disappointments, difficulty and setbacks, Rita is now considered to be the patron saint of the impossible. So, the saint of miracles themselves. St Gumaras of Belgium was an 8th century figure whose wife, a local noblewoman named Gunimari, was known for her both shrewish and her abusive behaviour. Despite Gumaras's attempts to salvage their relationship, they separated, and he went on to found an abbey in Lier and became the patron saint of difficult marriages. We're getting closer to Christmas, aren't we? St Lidwina fell while ice skating at the age of 15 and never fully recovered from her injuries. After a life of piety, her grave became a site of pilgrimage. After her canonisation, she became the patron saint of ice skaters. Is it going to be a white Christmas? Well, perhaps light a candle for St Medard of Picardy, patron saint of protection against bad weather. When he was an infant, an eagle flew above him during a storm to shelter him from the rain. According to folklore, whatever the weather, on St Bernard's Day, June the 8th, you can expect the weather to remain the same for the next 40 days, which would take us into St Januarius. Amongst the many relics in churches from the saints, a vial of blood belonging to St Januarius, a 3rd century bishop of Naples, was saved after his death in 305. The blood performs a long-standing miracle. Despite its age, it liquefies on 3 dates in the year, September the 19th and 16th of December, and Saturday before the first Sunday in May. For that reason, patron saint of blood banks. But far more bloodthirsty, and you may think that this might be the patron saint of hospices, or hostelries, hotels, or hospitals. St Julian the Hospitaller, this is the Knights of St John, opened a hostel for travellers and dedicated his life to providing hospitality for the sick and needy, but only after he'd killed his parents in a twist on the story of Oedipus. He became the patron saint of murderers, amongst other things. He'd essentially run away, and a long time he had nothing to do with his parents. He married and set up a home with his wife. His parents tracked him down in their older years, and his wife greeted them when he was out on a business trip. And she was so accommodating. She took the spare room and gave the parents-in-law, the marital bed. Greater comfort, it's understandable, but then St Julian came home in the dark. We've all done it, tried to get into bed, there's someone else in there. If you've ever stayed in a backpacker hostel or a train and not wanted to disturb the others, he found someone in bed with his wife, and what perhaps St Julian had as some sort of saintly voice in his head was, well, murder the two of them. Après, on turning on the lights, he killed his parents. His wife eventually got over the fact that he was quite so amenable to killing her, and she helped him repent forevermore. I think it should be the wife that's the saint. St Drogo was afflicted by a mystery ailment that made him physically repulsive, and he's now considered the patron saint of unattractive people. Entirely unrelated, he's the patron saint of coffee houses. Surely public houses would have been better. Lots of alcohol, and you know where I'm going with that. Edinburgh in Scotland, a good city for a Christmas or New Year break. Adopted by the city as such, St Giles is the patron saint of breastfeeding. What could be more lovely for a nativity scene at Christmas? Nativity. I think I made a Freudian slip there. St Giles is said to have lived as a hermit in the south of France in the 7th century, nourishing himself only on the milk of a female deer. Not dear, darling, my love, but hind or hart, fast of flight and strong of kick. Perhaps he dazzled her with his halo, like car lights. Longevity of the relationship, but the intimate milking process, probably the extent of the nurture and suckling exchange, perhaps saving her from a royal hunt. Back to the Nativity, St Balthazar. Medieval tradition has it that the 3 kings who visited Jesus in the stable came from all corners of the medieval world. Balthazar hailed from Africa, frequently Egypt. At the time, Romani card shops and sideshow sleight-of-hand merchants were popular entertainers across Europe. Because it was mistakenly believed that they came from Egypt, hence gypsies, the Egyptian king St Balthazar came to be their playing cards saint. No, not Hell's Angels, St Columbanus. Spent much of the 6th and 7th century roaming around Europe, and that love of the open road has led him to be considered the patron saint of motorcyclists. Specifically Siena, San Bernardino, well known for his crowd-pleasing public preaching, is considered to be the patron saint of advertising and public relations. Of personal interest to me, St Adjutor. Either escaped Muslim captures in the First Crusade, escaped by swimming, possibly to Cyprus, or just a Crusader territory, perhaps all the way to the French enclave, and was transported back to France by Mary Magdalene. Perhaps it was the name of a boat, or else calmed a whirlpool that was emerged beside the boat he was travelling on. He's considered the patron saint of swimmers and those in danger of drowning. You'd think scuba as well, wouldn't you? But settle back, there's 10,000 saints in 2,000 years, a lot of miracles, and you can be venerated unofficially. St Rita became a non-virginal nun with 2 children after ending a family feud, and lots of piety. St Elmo's fire, angel freed him from prison. He did some baptising. Romans didn't like the baptising either. So he was rolled down a hill in a barrel full of spikes, which he survived. And good, the emperor tortured him, as was the fashion. Whipped, coated in pitch, set alight, which he also survived. Pitch, you just couldn't get the good stuff in the Roman days. Should have gone for naphtha, like they've got in Iraq. After escaping yet again, recaptured and tortured, he died after having his abdomen slit open and his intestines wound around a windlass. As you'll see in any iconography of him, he's a patron saint of sailors, electrical charges at mastheads of ships. This Saint Erasmus, also patron saint of stomach aches, stomach ailments, and labour pains. Saint Denis, the 3rd century Paris bishop that with 2 helpers converted lots of pagans to Christianity. Pagan leaders were not happy with the number of pagan followers that were dropping, and alerted the Roman authorities, naturally enough. Denis and his fellow missionaries were imprisoned for a long period of time before being beheaded on the hill that is now known as Montmartre. After he was beheaded with a sword, it is said that the body picked up his own head and walked for a few miles. While walking, the head preached a sermon the entire way before dropping dead at the site that developed into the present-day Basilica of Saint Denis. His walk after death made him the most famous cephalophore in Christian legend, patron saint of headaches. Not canonised, but obviously should have patron saint of gender-fluid people and facial hair. Wilgefortis, not officially recognised. She is still venerated by many. Another case of her parents forcing the daughters to marry. Wilgefortis's father promised her to a Moorish king, an Arab. To escape the unwanted marriage, the teenage took a vow of virginity and prayed to God to make her repulsive. As an answer to her prayers, she sprouted a full beard, which ended the engagement. Enraged, her father crucified her. After death, she became venerated as a folk saint, especially by women seeking to be disencumbered from abusive husbands. It would just be too depressing to write her up as the patron saint of those vulnerable to honour killings. That oxymoron. Church leaders ordered to turn over all the riches of the church to Roman authorities before they were executed. St. Lawrence asked for 3 days to gather everything up, make sure he got everything. He obviously distributed the riches to the poor instead, and after 3 days he presented the city's poor as the treasures of the church, along with widows and consecrated virgins as the precious crown. This angered the prefect, and he ordered Lawrence to be cooked to death on a gridiron. St. Lawrence, after suffering for a long time, famously exclaimed, "I'm well done on this side, turn me over." This humorous last words that we'd all aspire to led to his veneration as the saint of cooks, chefs and comedians. My spiritual father. St. Apollonia was tortured to death by a mob in Alexandria, Egypt. A prophesied calamity. Naturally, turn on the Christians, frenziedly. This virgin deaconess of the church was seized and had all her teeth pulled out or shattered. When her chastity was threatened, she jumped into the fire that a mob had prepared for her death. Even though suicide is considered a sin, virgin martyrs of the time, like Apollonia, were honoured for protecting their vows and staying true to the church. Apollonia thus became the patron saint of toothaches and dentists, as well as assuming the role of the tooth fairy in some parts of Italy. Known as the last scholar of the ancient world, St. Isidore lived during a time of violence, widespread illiteracy and cultural disintegration. When he served as an archbishop in Seville, Spain, he was instrumental in the assimilation of the different barbarian cultures into the Visigoth kingdom, looking to foster the spiritual and material welfare of the people. His strongly religious leadership led to the conversion of many to Catholicism, and he fostered education amongst the people by introducing them to philosophers such as Aristotle. A prolific writer, Isidore started an encyclopedia, patron saint of students, computer users, computer technicians, programmers, the internet. Because you use the internet as an encyclopedia of universal knowledge, don't you? Or more outdated, archaic thoughts like him for use of the comma, the period and the colon. I have saved St. Nicholas till last, patron saint of sailors, merchants, archers, repentant thieves, children, brewers, pawnbrokers and students. What's that got to do with Christmas? His 6th of December death date. He threw money through a window, landed on the shoes, the family's shoes that were drying by the fire, and they found a little treat in the morning. He did many kind and generous deeds in secret, expecting nothing in return. Patron saint of voyagers and sailors as well, saving many people from famine. It is the time of pagan midwinter feasts. He spared the lives of those innocently accused. Turkish-born. I don't know if that's why we have turkeys at Christmas. He did get put in jail at one point by the Romans on a pilgrimage sailing to the Holy Land. He got some sailors to chill out in a tempest. Okay, really the last one, St. Matthias, patron saint of addiction. The Holy Spirit will empower people to exercise self-control so that they have good health. No, right, really the last one. A monk from Gaza travelled to Alexandria. Does everyone know where Gaza is? He got the name and address of every prostitute in the city of Alexandria. He hired himself out as a day labourer and took his wage to one of these women at the end of the day. He would hire the woman for the night and, according to legend, spend the night praying for her or preaching to her. This practice was condoned by the church, and many prostitutes in the city abandoned their profession and became wives and mothers. St. Vitalis of Gaza. St. Vitalis was killed by a man who misunderstood the nature of the monk's visit to a brothel and struck him on the head. He managed to return to his monastic hut. Large numbers of prostitutes of the city came out to explain his works and walked in candlelit procession with lanterns as his body was brought to the grave. Venerable Vitalis of Gaza. Big in the Oriental Orthodox Church. But things would be amiss if there's the process that I've gone into before with Bepe. B''PH if you want to read about it. 8 days after the birth of Jesus, he would have been Jewish, wouldn't he? The yard was chopped off. Joseph is most likely to have sliced off the foreskin and stopped the blood flow. Perhaps that's what the 3 kings descended on the stable for, to stop the blood flow from the little member of the Son of God. Such a thing might bring people out of the woodwork, wouldn't it? At the turn of the century, in 1900, before the First World War, the Catholic Church again tried to discourage circumcision. Europe isn't the Middle East or Africa climate. The small town north of Rome. On New Year's Day, the 1st of January, would march around the town, the priests proudly holding aloft Jesus' foreskin relic. But you're not allowed to write about it, you'll be excommunicated. For the Feast of the Holy Circumcision, I'm not sure what you're supposed to eat. I don't know if it's sausages or what. Chipolatas? But 1983 it got stolen. Don't know if it went back to the church, whether it went to whatever the local mafia near Rome are called, I've forgotten. Satanists, perhaps it was them. In the Middle Ages, a dozen churches across Western Europe claimed to have the holy foreskin. That's enough for all the disciples put together. Did they all donate to spread the word? Memorabilia has to be signed and authenticated. In 800, Charlemagne, the French fella, king, unifier, crusader, presented a little bit of vellum and a little splinter from the cross to the Pope to help for better communing with the divine. They're incorruptible by natural decay. If you're fully committed to understanding God on earth in fully human form, the lack of sanctity of the little PP is part of it. There is, of course, the breast milk of the Virgin Mary. St. Catherine of Siena, the mystic marriage. It's been painted by Giovanni da Palio in 1460. St. Catherine of Siena had a vision that she was married to Jesus Christ and his foreskin served as the wedding ring. St. Catherine, really. Dreams of marriage suggest there were dreams of consummation as well. Nuns, what you like?